You're watching The Legal Breakdown. So, Glenn, Donald Trump's close confidant, Roger Stone, was caught on tape plotting the assassination of two prominent Democrats, Eric Swalwell and Jerry Nadler. Here's a clip of that footage.
Be a peace there and go find Swalwell and get this over with. It's time to do it now. Then we'll see how brave the rest of them. Either Swalwell or Nadler has to die before the election. They need to get the message. I'm just not putting up with this again.
First of all, why is this guy walking free?
I wish I had a good answer to why Roger Stone has not been criminally prosecuted for crimes other than the ones he was criminally prosecuted for, lying to Congress to protect Donald Trump and threatening witnesses previously, criminally convicted, sentenced to 40 months in prison, and 3 days before he was to report to the Federal Bureau of Prisons to begin serving that 40-month sentence, he gave an interview. He said, Donald Trump, I want a commutation of my sentence. He didn't even ask for a pardon, but he said in substance, I stayed strong for you. I want my sentence commuted. In other words, wiped off the books. And that very day, Donald Trump commuted his sentence to 0. And Roger Stone didn't need to go to prison. Of course, Trump went on to pardon him fully after commuting his sentence. Why Roger Stone has not been prosecuted is beyond me. You know, we know about his involvement with Proud Boys and other bad actors in the run-up to January 6th. We've seen other tapes of him saying, let's get right to the violence. Brian, I can only hope that the Department of Justice is working hard, you know, behind the scenes, out of the sight of the American people, to see if there's enough evidence to criminally charge Roger Stone. But I wish I had a better answer for you. Here's what I want to do. I know you played the clip, but here, let me just read the very words that have been reported. This is a transcript of that recording of Roger Stone saying, go find Swalwell and get this over with. It's time to do it. Then we'll see how brave the rest of them are. Either Swalwell or Nadler has to die before the election. They need to get the message. I'm just not putting up with this S anymore. Now, are those words sufficient to bring criminal charges against Roger Stone? Sadly, as a career prosecutor, I will report that standing alone, those words might not be enough. Why? Because if he had gone on, or if somebody at his urging had gone on to actually try to kill Nadler or Swalwell, then obviously it would be attempted murder. But in order to charge those words, there would have to be proof beyond a reasonable doubt of a conspiracy, which is a criminal agreement that Roger Stone entered into with at least one other person to commit the crime of murder, and then one overt act, which means one thing that one of the conspirators did in the direction of committing the crime. I don't know if those other elements, those other facts, that other evidence exists, and if DOJ has it, but, you know, uttering those words standing alone, as egregious as they are, and as much as they make us feel like that must be a crime, certainly threatening a government official, you know, it may be that you need more evidence than just that audio recording to actually charge Roger Stone with a crime.
What about wrapping it up as part of a broader RICO case, or as part of the prosecutions against these extremist groups like the Proud Boys? I mean, like, if Roger Stone was pushing for violence against one person, the assassination of Democratic officials, and that's similar to what the rest of these groups were doing, for which they're all being prosecuted, how come he wasn't wrapped up into those prosecutions?
Yeah, it's a great question. So it feels like he's part of a broader conspiracy, not necessarily a RICO conspiracy, but what we call a 371 conspiracy. And that is simply any conspiracy to commit offenses against the laws of the United States or to defraud the United States, for example, out of a free and fair election. So based on all the reporting we've seen about Roger Stone's conduct, you know, think back to what was going on in the Willard War Room at the time. We have yet to see anybody charged as a result of that, you know, Willard Hotel War Council that was going on. right? And their determination was to overturn the results of the 2020 election. It's really difficult for this old prosecutor to understand why we haven't seen more people charged. But, let's not lose hope, because remember, in the one indictment that was brought in Washington, D.C. against Donald Trump alone for his attempt to overturn the 2020 presidential election, there are 6 co-conspirators who are detailed in that indictment. They're not named, but they are described sufficiently so we know they are people like Rudy Giuliani and Sidney Powell and Mark Meadows and corrupt DOJ official Jeffrey Clark and John Eastman. We know who they are. And another safe bet, Brian, would be to bet on those people being criminally indicted sometime in the future. I don't believe Jack Smith would have put that information about those co-conspirators who the evidence shows committed crimes together with Donald Trump. He wouldn't have put that in there if he didn't intend to indict them as well. So I think that will be the second wave of indictments in DC. Then I hope and expect the third wave will be the people at a minimum at the Willard Hotel War Room, people like Bannon and perhaps Stone, perhaps Mike Flynn and others. That's what I am keeping an eye out for.
Glenn, is it unusual that this amount of time would pass without any steps toward prosecution for Roger Stone? Does it mean that, for example, we're unlikely to see some prosecution? Or does it mean that perhaps prosecutors haven't even seen this footage until it was just released?
I think holding everybody accountable for what they did on and around January 6th is beyond a marathon. It's like the longest, most grueling justice triathlon that has ever been run. So, it took a long time to hold all of the wrongdoers accountable who were part and parcel of the Watergate scandal back in the 70s. And I suspect we're going to be talking for the next few years about the indictments that continue to roll out against the people who were responsible for all things January 6th. That's my hope. That's my expectation. And we, the people, better not be let down by the Department of Justice, because everyone who had a piece of January 6th needs to be held accountable. And in my heart of hearts, I still believe they will, Brian.
Glenn, you were a federal prosecutor for 3 decades. What was your reaction to seeing a close confidant of the then president of the United States plotting the assassination of high-profile Democrats?
Disgust and a searing question in my mind regarding how is it that if other folks had access to this deeply incriminating evidence against Roger Stone, like this audio recording, how is it that our Department of Justice has not wrestled this beast to the ground and indicted all of the other folks who there seems to be considerable evidence against regarding their participation in all things January 6th. So I think probably beyond everything else, I am perplexed, right? Justice delayed is justice denied. We've often heard that. And I think the shining example of that is Donald Trump, who could have been arrested on January 20th, 2021, the minute he left office. That's when the time was right. And we have been waiting for justice ever since.
Well, we'll obviously keep an eye on everything that happens with Roger Stone and the rest of Donald Trump's criminal cabal here as we continue to move forward, as we continue to see these prosecutions play out. And hopefully at some point in the not so distant future, we can see even those unindicted co-conspirators and those regular co-conspirators who were part of all of these, this whole enterprise with Donald Trump, see their day in court as well. So with that said, for anybody watching, if you want to follow along with this stuff, please make sure to subscribe. The links are right here on the screen. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
And I'm Glenn Kirshner.
You're watching The Legal Breakdown.